Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Calling All Creatures. Tonight, we have a really cool podcast. We're talking about one of the bigger animals that we have out there in the Americas and stuff, and that would be bisons. And so I have Professor Philip Urso on the podcast with me tonight. He is the Assistant Professor of Bison Studies, South Dakota State University, and we're going to have some bison dialogues. So hopefully you guys are all set to listen in and learn some interesting things about bison tonight. So, Professor Urso, thank you so much for being on the podcast tonight and talking to me about bison and helping us to learn more about them.
You bet. I'm glad to do it. Yeah.
So first off, how did you even get into studying bison? I mean, was it something that you've always wanted to do or thought about, or did the bison just kind of pull you in once you started working with them?
Oh, I think more of the latter, officially. So I actually grew up in Texas on a cow-calf operation and knew I was going to stay and loved beef cattle, right? I really was committed to that through all of my education, and I studied feedlot nutrition and beef cattle nutrition through my PhD program. Afterwards, I transitioned into a role at my alma mater where I went to school in Southeast Texas, and which was in cervid nutrition, actually, and teaching about cervids and different deer species across the state and across the country. And I really loved it. I got to a point where I needed to grow a little bit academically and do a little bit more research than what my appointment was. And I was kind of poking around, and a friend of mine a colleague, had reached out to me and said there's a position open at SDSU, which is specific to bison, that role was. And I said, I kind of bridged the gap a little bit. Having a lot of experience with beef cattle, having a lot of experience with deer and bison, kind of falls somewhere in the middle of that realm. They're not true they are true wildlife, but we're treating them more and more like domestic animals every day
right.
But they're not quite beef cattle, not even close, really.
Right.
And, it was a really logical fit. The school and the committee really felt the same way, I like to think, and they offered me the position. I started my role with SDSU in 2023, late 2023, and have just fallen in love with it ever since. And I really firmly believe that this is truly a great industry to be in. Truly great people that I work with, and we all work with one of the most majestic and wonderful animals on the continent.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this is funny, but, not besides, seeing the stories and stuff about the crazy people that are, messing with bison in Yellowstone and getting gored, because I don't even understand where the brain or the mindset is for that. But anyway, I watch a show, probably not, I don't know how many people. I like to watch, I'm strange, I like to watch Mountain Men.
That's okay. That's a good show.
It is a good show. And, I mean, it helps you learn a lot of different things. And it's very interesting to me to learn about these guys and what they do out there and how they survive. And one of the guys on the show, he's been working for a bison rancher. And I think he's actually got his own little I don't know, herd, I guess, going now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Sure, yeah. Anyway, so it's kind of interesting that, I kind of learned a little bit on Mountain Men about bison. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's kind of
where you can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, So why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you're actually doing at South Dakota State? I mean, Assistant Professor of Bison Studies is kind of a cool title.
I like to think it's very cool. I am not the first person to have that title. I have a wonderful colleague by the name of Dr. Jeff Martin, and he works in the Department of Natural Resources. And so what's different about him and me is we both look at bison and appreciate bison really similarly, but he is housed in a different department, whereas I'm over in the Department of Animal Science. And so our research is a little tailored to each of us in that regard. But at the same time, him and I both do a really, I know he does, and I like to think that I do as well, but he does a really great job of asking the producers, what kind of research do you really want to see from us at SDSU, and how do we do it? And I do the same thing, and that's kind of how I've gotten to my agenda. My specialty is specifically within nutrition, right? So beef cattle nutrition, ruminant nutrition, if you will. And when I talk to producers, most of the time I hear questions about nutrition. And that's kind of what's driving my research agenda, specifically mineral nutrition. And so that's really our big effort right now, is going through conducting strategic censuses on different populations to see what is the circulating mineral of these animals, and how can we as managers of them better provide so that they are thriving and living their best life. That takes officially about 60% of my time. The remaining percentage I dedicate to teaching, and that leads me into one of the big agendas that was kind of tasked upon me upon hiring, was developing and starting a full-on bison curriculum. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, and it was a process, don't get me wrong, but a very positive one. A long process, but a positive one, and a very smooth one at that, too. The state of South Dakota and South Dakota State is very enthusiastically supportive of the bison curriculum, because we have really and truly been working with bison in some capacity for quite some time. It started with a researcher, Dr. Benoit St. Pierre, who really wanted to characterize the bison rumen. And so he started to crack open that web of research, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. And it started to catch fire after that. More and more professors and more researchers started to jump on and want to help the producer and help the animal. And it led us to here, where we founded the Center of Excellence of Bison Studies at South Dakota State University. I say we as the royal we. I was not hired at that time. But that got started around 2021, and it's been going strong as a major kind of connecting point, if you will, between the producers, the research, and academia within the bison world.
Cool. So now, is that because I was going to ask you about, there was a minor and certificate program that South Dakota had launched. Is that the program?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good.
We were successful in getting that program approved by our Board of Regents as of May 2025. And as of this fall, we have a handful, not an overwhelming amount, but a handful of students that are truly bison minors and seeking a bison certificate, right? So very exciting. And I've talked to a handful of students that have told me, two specifically, if you're going to cite me here, right? But two that have told me directly that they chose South Dakota State specifically because of the bison minor, which is very exciting.
Yeah. So, what are, just in general, I mean, I don't want you to go through like a whole curriculum or anything, but what are some of the kinds of things that the students are going to get to learn?
Sure. Well, there's 2 bison-specific courses at SDSU that I teach: Introduction to Bison Management and Advanced Bison Production. In Introduction, we focus really heavily on like the theory of managing bison, in terms of, kids need to understand what a rotational grazing pattern is, and how the theory of nutrition and how the theory of bison welfare and body conditioning scores work. And that's really what we cover in Intro. In Advanced Bison Production, it really takes much more of a production scope, that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So they're really focusing on, if they're going to do and operate a bison enterprise, whether that be a private enterprise, whether that be with a tribal nation, whether that be at a park or zoo or anything like that, you need to, I asked them to walk through all of the steps. So budgets, animal management, pasture management, grazing management, all of these things that they need to understand for them to really go out into the field directly and have what's as close to real world experience as we can get within academia, I think. On top of that, with the advanced class, we partner and have a really great partnership with Custer State Park, in which we take students out to the roundup, in which they do every imaginable job. They are collecting research samples. They are going through the normal the yearly process of working animals, where that may just be working gates or reading brands or putting in ear tags and things like that that are conducive to the park's success. And so that was a really big hit. This is our second year that we've gone so far. Last week was actually the Custer Roundup, and we should have an article, a really nice piece coming out here pretty soon from our marketing department that highlights that trip as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah. On top of those things, we also have a pretty large focus on the range management side of things. So we've worked in quite a number of range courses that are taught over in our Department of Natural Resources, because if you're going to really manage bison, you really have to understand the rangeland itself.
Right. Because
the two really work so seamlessly together. To understand one is to understand both.
Right. Right. I think that goes hand in hand with like any kind of probably grazing animal you have. You need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, for those out there, I guess, that are interested in doing any kind of bison studies, it sounds like SDSU is the place that they probably want to go to, because it sounds like you guys have quite the program that you've got started out there for this. So that's really awesome that you guys were able to do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I'm a little biased, but I really believe that to be true.
Well, yeah, and like you said, some people are starting to go, more towards the bison herds and instead of cattle and things like that. So, you do need to if you're going to go that route, then it's always good to learn about them.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So, with that being said, for the folks out there who might not know much about bison, other than, of course, seeing them in, say, Yellowstone on TV or on a flag or something, what makes bison so special, or I guess different from just regular cattle?
Oh my gosh, there's so much we can talk about here, and I love it. Yeah. So, comparatively, bison are very unique to cattle, because bison really and truly evolved. Their evolution coincided a lot with the evolution of North America itself. Right, so the pastures, the prairies, the typical sprawling grasslands that covered this country were ideal for bison. They were really and truly the most effective keystone species in that role, in that specific situation, right? And a little brief history lesson, right? So in mid to early 1800s, there were estimated, depending on who you ask, there was an estimated anywhere between 30 to 60 million bison across North America.
Wow.
And by 1900, there were, again, depending on who you ask, as low as 600 left on Earth. And so they really went through a major hardship at the hands of, malicious players that were using that as a way to kind of have ulterior motives with controlling indigenous populations and things like that, which is obviously terrible. But at the same time, the bison, post this systematic eradication, were able to and are currently bouncing back. Yeah. So with that, I think it really paints a really beautiful picture of the resilience of people in North America, right? That we are resilient, and just like the national mammal is, right? So being able to bounce back and come back as strong as ever, and hopefully continuing on this upward trend of getting back on the landscape and restoring the American prairie is really what bison is all about. Mm-hmm. Because of their evolutionary history, they really are regenerative to the prairie. If you put out a beef animal on grassland, right, they're going to change the grassland in a specific way. Good, bad, or indifferent, they're going to change it.
Right.
And that may lead us down into paths where there may not be native species, there may be excess native species, right? And there may be monocultures, there may be all kinds of different things that the animal can do. But with bison, because they evolved with the prairie, they really promote biodiversity as well as just healthy natural grasslands and native grasslands at that. So a really unique role that they play in such that they fit and work so well on the prairie.
Right.
If we get into the minutia of dividing and determining the difference between beef and bison, obviously, if you're going to work with bison, you're going to have vastly different facilities. You're going to have different costs, different things that you're working with in terms of management styles, in terms of grazing styles and things like that, because they do behave in a pasture pretty different than beef, surprisingly. There is a lot of data also that shows that bison, if you're an everyday consumer, right, and you're not going to go start a bison ranch, you can still opt to get bison, and bison is healthier, quote unquote, healthier than beef, right, because there is significantly less fat present. Bison is also significantly higher in iron, as well as things like vitamin B, or B vitamins, which is an inherently positive thing. So you still get your red meat, your protein fix, but at the same time, you're still getting all these benefits from not eating super fatty beef. And I say that fully understanding that I still am a part of the beef industry and do love a good fatty steak, right?
Right.
So I'm not ever going to bash the beef industry in that regard, because they have a product and the product is good, very good. But it's a good alternative product that I think more people should work into their diets, working bison in.
Right. I think, I don't know, it's just me. I've tried it. I just didn't really care for it all that well, but I mean, a lot of people I know really like it. So,
well, how'd you try it? That's the question.
I think at the one time I tried it, it was as like hamburger, and then I think I actually had tried it as a stew meat in stew before.
Okay. I've had poor experiences and I've had great experiences.
Right.
And I can say the same for beef. I can say the same for pork. I can say the same for lamb. I think the best bison that you can cook is the bison that you cook at home, right?
Right.
And I think that's true with a steak, with a taco, with anything, because you know and you do your research and know how to cook it, the temperatures to get to, the way that you like to cook it, the seasonings that you like. That's the best way to eat it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like I said, a lot of people I know really like it. They enjoy eating it. So a friend of ours had actually, I think I want to say he took his daughter and they went up and they did a hunt. So he he came back with some. Yeah.
Good.
So, and I'm glad you kind of touched on, how the role that bison also play in helping to keep our grasslands healthy, because I was actually going to ask you about that. So I'm glad you touched on that as well, to to let people know, they are how, that's the thing. People don't realize that, like many animals, there's a reason that they're here. They are helping the ecosystem, pretty much with anything that's out there. That's the reason they are here on this earth. Everything plays a part. So
it does. Yeah, I totally agree. And I really appreciate the role that everything plays, from bison down to the prairie dogs that they work with, to the dung beetles that they support, to the plant communities that they spread through their wallows and through their capes. There's a lot of studies done that show that they can distribute up to millions of seed heads every year, based on just the plants the seed heads attaching to their cape.
Wow.
And then traveling with them, right? And then falling off whenever they fall off. And then they spread that diverse plant community in a really positive way. Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would think that people, you would realize that with those big, like the shaggy capes and stuff, when they're passing by plants and stuff, obviously they're going to attract some of the seeds and stuff and carry them with them, just like other animals do as well. So I'm sure their capes probably catch a little bit more, though. I think they're a little more dense, So.
Oh, sure. I encourage you and anyone listening that go look at a picture. Like next time you see bison, a perk of working with bison is there are countless incredible photos available. Right, because people love taking pictures of bison.
Yeah.
But next time you see one, take a look and see how many seed heads you can see, and it'll be more than a handful. That's for sure.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just one of those little things you never notice until you're paying attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, just for kind of a fun moment, now that you've kind of mentioned that little fun tidbit, what is one of maybe your favorite or most surprising bison facts that, if you tell somebody about it, they just kind of look at you like, get the heck out of here. No way.
Oh, gosh. I struggled with this one. I've been thinking, because I've been asked this before, and I never really have a good one because there's so many good things to think about. I think what interested me the most when I started working with bison was that they go through essentially what we kind of anecdotally refer to it as a standing hibernation. And so during the winter, granted, if we think about their evolutionary history, how they evolved with this a vastly different climate, a much colder climate, during the winter, there is very little grass and food to be had.
Right.
And so they've actually developed the ability to go through this quote-unquote hibernation, where they still forage and they're still getting the food that they need, but it's at a much, much lower level, and they'll lose up to 10% of their body weight. But they'll do that and still be in the heat of pregnancy and still do quite well with that calf, which is impressive.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is so.
Yeah, and
there you go. There's one of those weird facts that. I mean,
yeah.
That's why I said I love doing this podcast, because I learned so many weird, different things about different animals. I mean, well, and then I read and I watch. I've had a couple people on that did some of the. One was a producer on some of the Disney and the National Geographic stuff, and so of course, number one, in researching to talk to them and other things, I'm watching some of the stuff that they produce. And I'm learning all this stuff, like different things about octopus that I never octopi. I guess it's octopi.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that I didn't know. All sorts of crazy things. It's amazing the things that you will learn when you start doing these kinds of things. So I just love it. So there you go. There's one of those. Okay, get out of here.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
it is cool.
It's really fascinating because they're still so married to that. I mean, even if you put them in a confinement situation where they have to consume feed, they still will go through that pattern.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I guess one that I watched, and it was funny because it's on one of the newer ones that NBC Peacock just put out with Tom Hanks narrating them. And they were talking, they did a segment on one of these lizards in one of the, I think, South American forests. And it literally is, it's up in this tree, and it's like, I think, looking for a mate or whatever. And it like launches out of this tree, and it uses its tail as a little rudder as it's like flying towards the ground, and it just kind of steers itself around, and it lands in these like ferns. And I'm just like,
nice.
Wow, that's like a true Assassin's Creed type jump there.
Yeah, really.
Anyway, cool little tidbits you get to learn.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's learn a little bit more about bison nutrition. So you've been doing research on bison nutrition and, as you said, mineral needs. So you've been doing it also in different parts of the country. So what are some of the things you've been finding out doing that?
Oh, well, so a couple different things. So first of all, we were able to do a couple of projects. First, we partnered, again, we had that partnership with Custer State Park that we have great results from, in which we really were able to kind of compare Custer State Park with ranches that existed east of the Mississippi River.
Okay.
Because those ranches are very stereotypical smaller. They're smaller than your big Custers, your big Yellowstones and things like that, but those people still really, truly care and love about bison the same way that anyone would, which is great. So our big first year effort was conducting that strategic census of all the producers that would have us to go out to these ranches and draw blood samples, fecal samples, all of the things that we really need to really determine like a circulating level, which is kind of the baseline for what we want to do in the future, which is eventually to develop a pretty rigid guideline for what minerals or other nutrients that bison need day to day. Because if you're going to raise them, and if you're going to raise them in a confinement operation, you can still do that, certainly, and have a deep love for these animals, which a lot of these, if not all of these producers do, but you're going to need to feed them, right?
Right.
And on top of that, even thinking about zoos and other conservation herds, they're obviously not roaming the prairie like they would in the New York Zoo or the National Zoo or anything like that. So they're going to need feed. And so they need to have a pretty rigid, this is how much zinc per head per day that they need, for example. And that's kind of where this census was born, to see if there's any kind of glaring differences between beef and bison, which we're kind of seeing a little bit. They do behave and hold on to minerals a little bit differently than beef do. I think the running hypothesis here is that it's related to that standing hibernation, right? They know they're going to be deficient in the winter months, and so they hold on. They're a little bit more stingy with some of the things that they need, like copper, manganese, and some other minerals as well. We were able to compare beef to bison from previous data. We didn't do a side-by-side study, but beef is so well documented that we were making leaps and bounds from those previous studies as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And now we're moving towards we've completed the census. That census is ongoing, and so any ranch that we collect or work with gets put into the running bank of census data, Sensi data. But, it really is ever growing, ever present. And then eventually that's going to give us a really good kind of range of, okay, this is the nationwide average in this region, or a region-wide average. If you send me samples, or you send your veterinary diagnostic lab samples, and they fall outside of this range, then you probably should look at it. And that's kind of where we're hoping to go. First of all, to have that rigid requirement, but then also to be able to give data to those veterinary labs across the country via publication so that they can have the tools necessary to inform their local bison producers, right? So if something dies, they can know whether or not it was related to a deficiency or not.
Okay.
That's really nutrition, the nutrition area that I'm focusing on. There's also, we're really excited about some recent funding that we were awarded that is really going to focus on the energy requirements. So similar to minerals, thanks to USDA NEFA, we were able to start designing an experiment in which we are going to really elucidate the energy requirements of bison for the same reason, right? We need to know, and producers need to know, exactly at what levels to feed various energy feedstuffs, be that forage or grain or what have you, to make sure that they're living in this ideal where they should be, their happiest body condition score possible.
Okay, yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys are locking down their nutrition and mineral needs, which is great. So, in talking about those things, let's kind of flip the coin a little bit, and let's talk about some of the bigger health issues that bison are facing today, and how, people like yourself and your team are kind of working to tackle those challenges.
Yes, definitely. So, Dr. Martin is wonderful in the sense that he has organized a number of different projects. He is a much more successful grant writer than me, and he is doing tremendous work in the sense that, like, for example, he leads the Mycoplasma Task Force, Mycoplasma bovis Task Force. Mycoplasma bovis is a disease that can cross beef and bison really relatively easily.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And in beef, it's not necessarily as much of a concern because of the biology of beef, right? It needs to have some type of primary acting force for it to really create an infection and hurt the animal or even kill the animal. But with bison, it is that primary actor, and as a result, if your herd is positive for Mycoplasma bovis, you can expect a 20 to 30% death loss.
Oh, darn. Which
is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Dr. Martin leads that group. I'm on that task force as well, along with a number of really wonderful scientists, researchers, industry professionals that really are monitoring the mycoplasma outbreaks. We're conducting research within our own kind of respective labs about how we can, either create this vaccine for M. bovis or, improve or take vaccines that already exist and improve efficacy and get them to be more functional in bison, right? Things like that, and also talking to producers, seeing where the outbreaks happen, what caused those outbreaks, and how can we, if we can, mitigate that. And sometimes it's just the direction of the wind blows, unfortunately.
Right.
But that's a big one where South Dakota State is very fortunate to have MedGene here in Brookings, South Dakota as well, which is a major is a vaccine manufacturer, and they do tremendous research with all kinds of species, right? And they have been leading the way in deer. I know they've done a lot of work with deer and cervid species, and they're starting to branch out and work with bison as well. And so we're kicking cans down the road, if you will, about how we can start solving some of these problems, how we can start getting vaccines and start getting material to producer that helps them down the road. And it's exciting. So we are very aware of the disease crossover between bison, beef, between sheep and bison, for example. And it's out of my wheelhouse a little bit, but I do quite a bit of work with it, surprisingly. I very much am happy in my little happy space of nutrition.
Right.
But at the same time, if every bison producer is telling me they need a malignant catarrhal fever vaccine, then that's what I want to help do. Right.
Right. And it's interesting too, because you've mentioned several different groups. This manufacturer, and then like you guys are working on the different things from the nutrition and stuff, and then you've got your ranchers and conservationists and tribal nations and stuff out there that you've kind of mentioned throughout our talking. And it's interesting how the bison are connecting so many different groups together into these partnerships. It's kind of amazing. And how do you kind of feel that these partnerships are helping to shape the future for bison?
I truly believe that this is one of the most unique and special industries in all of agriculture, because I can sit down with big producers, and they ask the same questions and are so invested in the level of education that they have regarding bison, making sure that they're doing what's good for the bison as the small producer is. And there really is no locked doors anywhere within the industry. There is no animosity. There is no, oh, well, I don't want to do work with them because they blah, blah, blah. No, that really isn't the case. It's really such a positive industry between even like the National Bison Association, the Intertribal Buffalo Council, Tonka Fund. All of these groups are really, they all recognize that we're all on the same path, which is getting bison back on the landscape, right? And getting bison back on the menu, as well as getting them on the prairie. And so we all know that, whether we are a big group like National Buffalo Foundation or a regional group like the Eastern Bison Association, we all are committed to that main goal, and we all work together beautifully because of it. And it's great. Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like it. I mean, from everything that we've been talking about and all the different groups we've talked about, it really does sound like you guys are all working together and making a difference with this stuff. So That's awesome.
Yeah.
You also helped do something else. You also helped to put together an International Bison Health Symposium. So I bet that was a bit of work. But
it was.
What were some of the things that came out of that?
It was a lot of work. A lot. The vast majority of that credit goes to the National Bison Association staff, because they really pulled a lot of that together. I was a lot of boots on the ground here in Brookings. We hosted it in Brookings, and it was just a great experience. It was an invite-only event where we invited veterinarians that work specifically with bison, researchers that work specifically with bison in the health field, and had a series of lectures, series of research updates, Q&As, lectures geared towards bison health, whether that be from general herd health, how do you move your bison, what's the low-stress way to do that, all the way to different parasites that we're seeing in different samples. So, and everything in between as well. So it was a really powerful event, I think. Brookings is really and truly a beautiful town and a wonderful place to host an event like that because of all of the beautiful venues on campus. It turned out really great, a very positive kind of spreading of information so that veterinarians could go back to their own respective herds and have the tools needed to make good decisions about their local bison producer, right? That may not,
Right.
before that, they may not have known. And I did talk to a number of people, like, for example, the Eastern Bison Association, and some of the producers there sponsored their vet to go so that their vet would have a better grasp on bison management and bison health, so that whenever they came back, they were able to make great decisions for that herd. And they did. I talked to that veterinarian, and she's amazing. She did a great job with the roundup that I went to in Ohio, and it was so much fun. She came out of that experience with really positive things to say and learned a lot, which is exactly the goal.
Right. It sounds like you guys had a good time and it worked out well, so that's awesome. So I'm assuming you're going to probably be having more symposiums in the future.
Yes, we will. So this was the second ever International Bison Health Symposium. The first one was housed in Canada.
Good.
And that's really the namesake. Like, we really did partner with Parks Canada and a lot of producers and researchers in Canada to be able to come down to Brookings and present all of this data and information, which was a blast. But we're definitely going to host one again. It was the timing that we're trying to really sort out right now, because the first one was 10 years ago, was 10 years prior to the previous symposium. And we feel like, and producers and veterinarians felt like that was a little bit too long. We don't want to get into like a yearly cycle of that, because then people present the same thing and we're running thin on new updates and things like that.
Right.
Whereas if there was a really super pending update, we can always get that out at one of our regional conferences, National Bison's regional conferences, or the national conference in Denver every year. But we're gearing towards probably every 5 years, I think, is a pretty good number. We're going to give that a shot and see how it looks.
That sounds like a good number.
Mm-hmm.
So, just for a little general information on bison, about how big do these animals get, and about how much food can they consume?
Oh, sure. So, bison, the upper limit of a bison bull, a plains bison bull, can be upwards of 2,200 to 2,300 pounds. A big bull can get quite large, and that's probably the upper average, if you will, right? And then cows can get anywhere. Typically, cows aren't. They're floating around the 1,000 pound, 700, 800, 900,000 pound range, depending on their frame size, their condition, things like that. So they're pretty comparable to beef. The main difference is just how they're built. Most of their weight is in the front, right?
Okay.
Whereas their back ends are significantly smaller than beef, which is just one of the fun little nuances of them. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yeah, you can definitely see the difference.
Mm-hmm.
They got small little rear ends.
Yep. Which actually tends to make them more of a pain, actually. So because they're so front heavy and their heads and shoulders are so massive, they are so much stronger than a beef cow.
Right.
I've seen, they can dump over a 500-gallon water tank if they really are motivated, right? And that's kind of the rule of thumb is, if they don't want to be in there, they're not going to be in there, right? And they will tear apart and break anything that you put in front of them.
Dang. And is their eyesight poor? I think I read that somewhere. They don't have the best eyesight, do they?
Their eyesight is probably pretty comparable to beef, right? They see in the same colors as beef cows. They have similar eyes. And since they're prey animals, their eyes are on the side of their head, which gives them very poor depth perception. Right.
I just thought I'd ask and get a little bit more information about them, because my next question is about genetics and how important those are when it comes to helping to keep the bison herds healthy and strong.
Yes, very important. So genetics plays a big role in some of the decisions that we make. At the same time, because we understand the value of hybrid vigor, getting animals that are not of the same gene pool, of the same bison gene pool. I'm not talking about crossbreeding animals per se, like beef and bison, but getting a bull from a different herd can really improve your herd by increasing that genetic diversity.
Right.
So if we're able to do that, then the herd itself, hopefully, will work their way, and I say herd as in the national herd. There's a lot to be said about the value of genetic diversity and ensuring that the animals are genetically set up to handle adversities, such as climate change, such as disease outbreaks and things like that. And if we have just this purely genetically isolated herd, if one is ill because they have a poor immune system or their immune system isn't built for a specific outbreak, then they all get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we're able to kind of move animals around, trade animals across parks, trade animals across private enterprises, we increase that genetic diversity and improve the vigor of the herd, which is what we want.
Right. Interestingly, too, I just heard you say something about climate change. Are bison, do they actually help with climate change and say soil health and things like that?
Well, they certainly help with soil health, right? They are natural tillers of the soil and are able to break up that topsoil, that alluviated layer, such that it promotes plant diversity and promotes insect diversity, small mammal diversity, and again, falling into that keystone species. In terms of climate change, there's a lot of work. As you know, right now, that's really kind of a dirty word within the research business, if you will.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of positivity, right? So, trying to think about how to say this the right way, because that's really not my wheelhouse, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I can very well see linkages between some of the upstream or downstream effects between climate change. You don't have to work and have as much equipment and machinery to work bison compared to beef, and you're certainly not working them as often. So that does play an impact on how much emissions that are released as a result of bison.
I was just going to say, here's the big question. How much gas are they releasing?
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry.
They release the same amount of gas, if not less. And I think there's some researchers that are doing bison climate change and bison emissions work that will tell you that they are releasing less. I don't know those results specifically.
It's just interesting. Yeah, it's fun sometimes to listen to some of the things that get thrown around. So anyway,
I'm with you.
Okay, so for some of our listeners out there who are fascinated with bison and may want to learn more, maybe they're students, up and coming students or whatever. How can they maybe get more involved in bison studies or conservation?
I think there's a lot of really great ways to do that. I think, and selfishly, I'll tell you that if you're going to be an upcoming student and you're really committed to working with bison, to really consider the Bison Studies program at SDSU.
Yep.
I'm always welcome. Anyone who's listening can find my information on the SDSU website really, really easily. And I will always be able to reach out and let you know, answer any questions that you may or may not have. In terms of general opportunity, I think there's a lot of other opportunities as well. Going to Custer State Park, which has a pretty robust bison education program, right? They have the Bison Center next to the bison working corrals where they do the roundups.
Oh, okay, nice.
That has a lot of really great information. The North American Bison Discovery Center in North Dakota actually is a tremendous resource. They have a huge amount of information and have a beautiful facility, beautiful exhibits to be able to teach you more about bison. The National Bison Association also hosts resources and conferences, field days, things like that anyone can go to. As long as you are able to get registered, anyone is welcome. You do not have to be a bison producer to go to some of these events, specifically because we want to educate the public about bison, right?
Right.
So I encourage people to go look through those resources, reach out to any of the aforementioned groups, including myself, and I can tell you exactly how it will go. Is you will be greeted with a warm welcome with whoever it is, whether that be Custer or NBA or NBF or the Discovery Center or SDSU. You'll be greeted with a great smile, a warm welcome, and you'll hopefully leave with all your questions answered.
Awesome. And I will put a link to SDSU on my Facebook page for the podcast as well. So if anybody's online, they can link over so they can find out more information about you guys. So
yeah, good.
Now, looking ahead, where do you see bison research and the bison industry going over, say, the next decade or so?
Oh, that's tough. I think in the next decade or so, we are going to be continuing to do, since we're a land-grant institution, we really work at the service of this cross-section of research, education, and outreach, right? And I think the pinnacle of that is working with producers specifically to drive research and what is needed, right? Because we can get down into the weeds about how many hairs are on their head and how that affects breeding, but that doesn't really help the producer, right? So at least in my agenda, where I expect it to go is to continue to go down this path of how can we determine what minerals are present, how can we feed them at more efficient and more appropriate rates such that the producer is happy, the bison are happy and healthy and doing well. If you ask the same question to Dr. Jeff Martin, he will tell you that there's all kinds of things that we can do. I mean, he goes everywhere from being on the Mycoplasma bovis task force to working on a project now where he's focusing on bale grazing and how it affects not only bison and producers, but also the surrounding ecosystem, right? Even the grasses that persist after that, how it affects dung beetles. So continuing down that rabbit hole, I think, is where we're headed and where I'm happy to head, because at the end of the day, a producer comes and says, I read your research paper or I read your extension article and it was very helpful and I was able to make this decision because of it, then that's really the goal. Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I think that's anybody's goal that's kind of in your position. At least I hope it would be. To help them out.
Yeah, I hope it would be too.
You just never know, though, sometimes.
Yeah.
So, you have, obviously in talking with you, you have put a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and heart into your work, but what do you kind of feel has been the most rewarding part of working with these bison?
Ooh, I think the most rewarding part for me personally is working with my students. Being able to see the students progress, whether those be undergraduates or graduates that may or may not have zero experience with even animals, let alone bison, to go from walking into a major operation and a major roundup and being, shaking in their boots, to being able to read halfway hard to read brands, like a real cowboy or cowgirl, and helping this major operation read this information, do these tasks as if they fit in, is what really makes me happy. Seeing these kids get these experiences, putting smiles on their faces and teaching them something is really what I love the most.
Yeah. Yeah, educating is one of the better parts of doing stuff. So
I think so. Yeah.
Especially when you get to see the progression and you get this when things click with them and you can tell it's clicking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I have a terrific graduate student. I have 3 terrific graduate students right now, but my first one is really exciting because she came in and she had some bison experience, and we had to really work a lot and work really hard on getting a lot of laboratory experience, developing some professional skills, and then at the end of the day, she's coming out of her degree, and then people are quite literally, different industries, different producers, different companies are quite literally fighting over her on who's going to hire her. And so it was really exciting to see her success, and I'm very proud of her. But to see just her progression and how she's grown as not only a student, but also as a bison professional is really exciting. And that's really, at the end of the day, what I would like to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear for her. That's awesome. So good.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you can hope for when you're getting done with your degree and stuff, having people fight over you to give you a job.
I know. I told her, this is a good problem to have. She was over here stressing about it. There's people that don't get that. So
yeah, exactly. Enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then,
I say that I'm picking her up a little bit. I think all of this is really a testament to her too. So being able, she's what she came in with was being such a terrific people person,
right? Which
is 80% of the battle,
right?
So, yeah, and I know I'm going to have 2 more of those coming out. I've got 1 more. Another master's student and another PhD, and I really, truly believe and hope that they're going to be in the same boat. So,
good. Good.
And then all of my undergraduate students, I was very excited actually about a specific undergraduate student of mine who took both of my previous classes while he was still here, graduated. Unfortunately, graduated before we were able to officially create the minor, so he didn't get the minor or certificate.
Mm.
But he used the connections that he made in my class to land a position at Intertribal Buffalo Council, and is now currently working with Buffalo as a manager at ITBC, which is so exciting. I love that for him, and he was such a great student. He is very well deserving, and honestly, I could go and tell you all of these stories because I think about them often, but to answer your original question, that's really what gets me going.
Right. And I was going to ask you, because we're getting ready to wrap up here, but if there was one thing that you'd like the listeners to take away from our Bison Dialogues this evening, what would that be? It kind of sounds like part of that is what you were just talking about with the education and the learning and how much of a benefit these people got. But what is one thing you'd like the listeners to take away?
I think the big thing that I would like them to take away is that bison is truly for everyone. You don't have to be a producer to enjoy and appreciate bison, because if you go out onto this natural prairie and or go eat bison in the grocery store or at a restaurant or go to a zoo or Custer or so on and so forth, right? Everyone can appreciate and enjoy bison. And so I hope that as a listener, I hope you remember that, and know that it's just such a wonderful world to be in, and where we can work with these beautiful animals.
Yes, most definitely. And my one last closing thing is, guys, don't go mess with the big bison that are out there in the Yellowstone Park. Please quit doing that. Please
do
quit.
Do not pet the fluffy cows. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you've seen it, but you gotta live it. You gotta live it. You can't be going out there and getting on close and personal, right?
Yeah.
Even I know that. And I don't. Touching and working with as many bison as I have, you would think, oh yeah, I could go out and grab one really quick. No, do not. It's a bad idea.
Seeing some of these people, and then the one that was trying to push her child towards one to get a picture, I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Mm-hmm. They really are, despite what we think, they really are still truly wild animals. So,
oh my goodness! The only thing I can equate to this is an anecdote from my animal control time, where we would have, a dog that bit somebody had to go into quarantine for the 10 days, and you would have them in that quarantine kennel, and you'd have like a thing over the front of it and a big sign that said quarantine, and you'd have someone come in and look at a dog to adopt, and they'd ask, and you'd tell them what was going on, and don't, go near the kennel, don't put your hand in it. And I'd turn around every single time someone would be trying to stick their finger in that kennel.
Yep.
And I'm like, really? What did you not? I just can't. It's like, the dog's in there for biting. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you just can't with some people. I just can't. But that's even sillier. I mean, like you said, these are 2,200-pound animals.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good conversation with the lady that was on from the chimpanzee sanctuary in Florida, and we were talking about people don't realize how big these chimps get, because, they see the baby chimps in the movies and stuff and think, oh, how cute. And these male chimps can grow to be over 6 feet tall. And they're very, very strong. And it's like, they could rip a person apart, no problem. And people don't realize the strength of these wild animals. I just don't get it. I don't get it. But anyway, so yeah. Last closing.
Well, that's a whole other conversation of disconnection between agriculture. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just can't. But yes, please, people, quit messing with the wild animals. No matter what wild animal it is. Doesn't matter if it's bison, chimps, big cats, bears. Quit messing with the wild animals. Leave them alone. Just leave them alone. Anyway. Well, Professor Urso, it was wonderful to have you on the podcast this evening and learn all this really interesting stuff about bison. I'm so glad you were able to join me and give my listeners all these facts and stuff out there. And hopefully any students out there will now take a look at SDSU and maybe go there and learn more about bison through your programs you got.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori, for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. It was such a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you, too. And I'm just going to announce my next upcoming podcast. You're welcome to jump off or stay on, whichever you prefer. And I will shoot you a direct link to the podcast tonight if you want to put it out there for anything. So,
awesome. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, and thanks again. And I hope you have a great evening.
Yeah, you too.
All right, bye now. Okay, so Professor Urso just jumped off. Oh my gosh, it was so great talking with him and learning all this really cool stuff about bison. I really enjoyed the conversation tonight with him. So the next couple podcasts I have coming up is the next one is the end of October. It's the 30th. And I am going to have Dr. Robin Moore on with me, and we are going to be talking about caring for creatures both great and small. She is a veterinarian and owns her own practice, and actually a little bit of our focus is going to be on cats and some litter box issues. Dr. Moore did a blog pause Real Talks video and she was talking about some litter box wars she had in her own house with a couple of cats that she had, and what she went through, and some of the things she had to do to help remedy the situation. And I thought it would be great to have her come on and, talk a little bit about herself and her practice, and about these issues with the cats and the litter box wars she had going on. So if you guys have kitty cats and you have litter box wars, you might want to tune in on October 30th to listen to that podcast. And then on November 13th, I am going to have Lori Hood on with me. And she is the founder of Alaqua Animal Refuge. And Lori does a lot of animal rescue and stuff like that with wildlife and other things. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to have Lori come on and talk about Alaqua and what all they do over there. So I'm looking forward to having her on November 13th. And then just to let you guys all know, the next podcast would have actually been scheduled for the 27th. But seeing as how that's Thanksgiving Day, I don't think I'm going to be doing my podcast on that day. So you guys will have to come back instead on December 4th. That's when that next podcast will be. So again, don't forget, we're going to be talking to Dr. Robin Moore on October 30th and Caring for Creatures, both great and small. And some litter box kitty issues, or kitty litter box issues, I should say, get that right. And then on November 13th, talking with Lori Hood about Alaqua Animal Refuge. So I hope you guys will come back and listen in to those two podcasts. I'm looking forward to them. I think they're going to be great. So, all right, everybody. Hey, thanks for staying tuned. I know we went a little late tonight. And again, if you guys have any ideas or suggestions that you would like to put out there for me to try to get guests on, I'd appreciate it. I will look into it and see if I can get them on. If there's a particular animal you'd like to know more about, please shoot me a message, either callingallcreatures19@gmail.com or comment on my Facebook page or message me on there, whichever you prefer. Anything would be great, and just let me know. And don't forget, I'm on pretty much all the listening platforms for podcasts. You can find me on iHeart, Spotify, iTunes, Apple iTunes, Pandora. So on a lot of those places that you can listen in too. You don't always have to come to Spreaker and try to listen in at that link. So, all right, everybody. I hope you all have a great weekend and try to stay out of trouble. And don't forget to come on back on October 30th for the next podcast. Bye now.